Tonight, hours tick down on the border as record numbers of migrants rush to cross. With a pandemic-era rule ending, 11,000 people a day crossing illegally into the U.S. The concern, tens of thousands more aren't far behind. The Biden administration on defense. The Homeland Security Secretary saying they're prepared. Now armed troops patrolling across the Rio Grande. Families making desperate, dangerous river crossings. Is social media playing a role in the number of people coming? Plus, the crisis playing out beyond the border with shelter in short supply from California to Chicago and New York. Our team on the ground. Just breaking, a manslaughter charge is on the way for the subway rider who put a homeless man in a fatal chokehold. When he'll be in court. 7 million at risk of severe weather, including tornadoes. We'll tell you where. The man suspected in the disappearance of Natalie Holloway set to be extradited to the U.S. What he's accused of and why now. The new crackdown on power plants that run on coal and gas and the race to stop climate change. More pain for Peloton, recalling more than 2 million exercise bikes.
This is NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
Good evening and welcome. Tens of thousands of migrants who have endured smugglers, heat and dust storms, and difficult terrain are gathered along the southern border of the United States right now, believing their journey to the U.S. is about to get easier, knowing that at midnight the U.S. will lift a key border restriction that has limited migration in the name of public health. The law, Title 42, was a response to the COVID emergency. It allowed the U.S. to turn away asylum seekers to curb the spread of the virus. That authority expiring tonight. In anticipation of the change, officials say for a second day in a row, illegal crossings have reached record numbers as the humanitarian crisis grows on the U.S. side of the border. It's where we start tonight. Tom Llamas in El Paso, Texas, watching it all unfold.
Tonight, Title 42 set to expire. Fears of a crush at the border leading to changes big and small. Troops now armed near the Rio Grande. New fencing going up outside of Juarez. And that massive crowd of migrants by the border wall waiting days to be processed, finally rounded up and put in single file lines. The Biden administration trying to combat rumors spreading on social media that the end of Title 42 means a free-for-all.
I want to be very clear. Our borders are not open. People who cross our border unlawfully and without a legal basis to remain will be promptly processed and removed.
On Facebook and TikTok, hashtags in Spanish discussing Title 42 fueling the confusion. The New York Times reporting one video seen more than 96 million times falsely claims May 11th you cannot be deported. Title 42 comes to an end.
What did you hear on social media about the end of Title 42 and what would happen on May 11th?
Imwainer Carcamo from Nicaragua told me he saw on Facebook misleading information about the change in policy, that migrants would no longer be deported. Those rumors helping fuel the massive surge in illegal border crossings. DHS officials say a record high, more than 11,000 migrants were stopped by Border Patrol on Wednesday. A similar situation on Tuesday, when 17% were turned back because of Title 42. But the vast majority, 83% of migrants, were released into the U.S. to make asylum claims.
I really don't think that all these people should be let in. I really don't.
Republicans tonight blaming White House policies for sparking the chaos.
Joe Biden has decided he wants an open border where anybody can come across the border. This is despicable what he's doing to American citizens.
Border towns feeling the surge. Migrants arriving from Laredo, Texas, to Yuma, Arizona, to San Diego, California.
I understand that everybody wants a better future, but they're taking our taxes, they're taking everything from us.
Julissa Garcia lives in El Paso. She has 4 children and says her city is overwhelmed. She's worried about the safety of her kids.
They're using Moorhead Middle School as a
shelter?
Like a shelter for the immigrants, and I think it's unsafe for my children because I have 3 of them next door on the other school.
Yeah, so it concerns you as a mom?
Yes, it does.
But others who were immigrants themselves trying to help, remembering what it's like to have nothing and start from scratch.
You just donated a bag of food. Why'd you do that?
They're poor and they need to eat. I need to help. I like helping and I have a good heart. And I feel more for the children.
Tom, let me circle back to this misinformation being seen on social media. What's the White House telling you about how they're combating this?
Yeah, well, Lester, look, these migrants in many ways, they're fooled by the coyotes that are smuggling them in. And on top of that, they're desperate, right? So they want to believe whatever they see on social media. I just got off the phone with a White House official who says that's one of the reasons they created that app, right? So now these migrants who are applying for an appointment to seek asylum can get on the app. They can also get the information in Spanish. They can understand what the rules are and not believe that misinformation that is spreading like wildfire. Lester?
All right, Tom Llamas, thank you. Don't miss Top Story on News Now tonight. The situation at the border is straining resources across the country as migrants are sent to cities hundreds of miles away. Gabe Gutierrez reports.
Tonight, the migrant crisis is stretching far beyond the southern border, from Chicago, where immigrants are sleeping in a police station, to Denver, where they're packing into this parking garage and overwhelming this intake center.
There's nowhere else for these refugees to go.
New buses of migrants also arriving in Philadelphia and Washington, D.C., so-called sanctuary cities where local authorities have said they won't enforce federal immigration laws. Here in New York, Mayor Eric Adams is now sparring with the suburbs as he blames the Biden administration for the city running out of shelter space.
The national government has turned its back on New York City.
As the city receives up to 1,000 migrants a day, a plan to bus migrants to 2 surrounding counties has now sparked fierce backlash.
I think it was an ambush.
Did you feel blindsided?
Yes, I felt disrespected.
Teresa Kenny is the supervisor of Orangetown, New York, a quiet suburb some 25 miles north of Manhattan.
Is this a case of not in my backyard?
No. We have zoning laws because things are appropriate in appropriate locations. That's appropriate for a hotel. It's not appropriate for a homeless center, which will have up to 340 single adult males put in it suddenly.
So local officials have gotten a temporary restraining order, even posting these sheriff's department vehicles outside of this hotel to prevent migrants from being bussed in.
He doesn't know what to do with, and we don't want him up here. We're not a sanctuary city.
Today, in a neighboring county, the first migrant buses arrived, while in the city, emergency shelters like this one at a 1,300-room hotel just steps from Times Square are overflowing. This woman from Colombia tells us at first the conditions were rough, but they've gotten better.
How long have you been here?
5.
She's now been here 5 months. New York City budget officials estimate that by next year, caring for migrants, including housing them at hotels like this one, will cost taxpayers more than $4 billion. Lester?
Gabe Gutierrez, thank you. There is breaking news now in the chokehold death of a homeless man on the New York subway. The former Marine who held him down is set to be charged. Stephanie Gosk is following the story. What do we know about the charges, Steph?
That's right, Lester. The 24-year-old former Marine Daniel Penny will face a single manslaughter in the second-degree charge, according to the district attorney, who says he will be arraigned tomorrow. This is a charge that carries a maximum sentence of up to 15 years in prison, and it's used when someone recklessly causes the death of someone else. Now, Neely's death has triggered protests and calls for criminal charges in this city. The most recent, a protest on the subway that shut down a subway line over the weekend. Meanwhile, Daniel Penny's attorney says that his client acted in self-defense that day and that he and other riders on that train were, quote, aggressively threatened by Jordan Neely. We reached out to that attorney for further comment tonight and have not heard back. Lester, our sources had told us that the grand jury was going to review this case, but this news tonight means the district attorney has decided to skip that process. Lester?
Yeah, things moving very quickly. All right, Stephanie, thank you. Tonight, 7 million people are at risk for severe weather, including tornadoes and large hail across the plains and lower Mississippi Valley. Tornado watches in effect through this evening. A surprising development and a mystery going back almost 20 years. The man considered the prime suspect in the death of Natalee Holloway will be extradited to the U.S. on fraud and extortion charges. Here's Kristen Dahlgren.
Tonight, Natalee Holloway's family hoping to finally get some justice for the 18-year-old who was on a high school graduation trip to Aruba when she vanished in 2005.
There is still no sign of American Natalee Holloway.
In a case that made headlines around the world, Bjorn Vandersloot, who police say left a club with Natalee the night she was last seen, can now be extradited to the U.S. To face federal charges, he tried to extort $250,000 from the teen's mother in 2010. Vandersloot was never charged in Holloway's disappearance, but is currently serving a 28-year sentence after pleading guilty to killing Stephanie Flores in Peru on the 5-year anniversary of Holloway's disappearance. That country's new president now agreeing to the temporary extradition. Joyce Vance is the former U.S. attorney who signed Vandersloot's indictment back in 2010.
Without a body, a murder prosecution wasn't possible. It may never be possible. But this is still a form of justice for Natalee Holloway.
Vandersloot is accused of offering to tell Natalee's family how she died and where she was buried in exchange for the money. Authorities say he was given an initial payment of $25,000.
He took her attorney to a site he said the body was located at, but the body wasn't there, and he subsequently acknowledged that in emails.
An attorney for Vandersloot tells the Associated Press they will fight extradition. But in a statement, Natalee's mother, Beth Holloway, wrote in part, "The persistence of many is going to pay off. Together, we are finally getting justice for Natalee." Kristen Dahlgren, NBC News, New York.
After that town hall with Donald Trump, the woman who sued him and won a $5 million verdict against him this week, it's considering a new defamation suit. Here's Garrett Haake.
Former President Donald Trump.
Former President Trump's first televised town hall of the 2024 campaign, tonight potentially creating new legal and political challenges for the Republican frontrunner, with an attorney for E. Jean Carroll telling the New York Times she may sue Mr. Trump for defamation again over his latest attacks.
I have no idea who this woman is. This is a fake story, made up story. I have no idea who the hell. She's a whack job.
Just 2 days after a jury found Mr. Trump liable for sexually abusing Miss Carroll in the mid-90s and for defaming her in his denials. And legal experts tell NBC News Mr. Trump may have complicated his own defense in the special counsel investigation into his handling of classified documents, appearing to contradict his lawyer's claims that documents got to his Florida home by accident.
I had every right to do it. I didn't make a secret of it.
Throughout the 70-minute CNN town hall, Mr. Trump also repeated false claims about a stolen election and staked out one controversial position after another, including saying he'd pardon many of those convicted of crimes related to the January 6th attack on the Capitol that left 5 dead.
It will be a large portion of them, you know.
The former president dodged questions on key issues he could face in a second term.
Would you sign a federal abortion ban into law?
What I'll do is negotiate so that people are happy.
Can you say if you want Ukraine or Russia to win this war?
I want everybody to stop dying. They're dying, Russians and Ukrainians.
And as Washington grapples with a looming debt crisis, the former president offered this advice to Republicans.
If they don't give you massive cuts, you're going to have to do a default.
And tonight, a meeting planned for tomorrow between President Biden and congressional leaders on the debt ceiling has been postponed into next week. Speaker McCarthy telling reporters staff are still working. Lester?
Garrett Haake, thank you. The White House announcing tough new emissions limits for coal and gas-powered utilities. Several Republican states already threatening legal action. Tom Costello is following this. Tom, what's the plan here?
If implemented, these new EPA standards would force fossil fuel power companies to make deep cuts in greenhouse gas emissions, the equivalent of taking 137 million cars off the road each year, half the cars in the states. The EPA predicts 300,000 fewer asthma attacks and 1,300 fewer pollution-related deaths. President Biden wants to move the country from coal and gas power plants to clean energy, but the White House is facing serious pushback from Republicans, especially in West Virginia, with 90% of the economy dependent on coal. The Attorney General there tells me he will file suit to block the rule, arguing it would cost thousands of jobs and drive up electricity rates nationwide. Lester.
All right, Tom, thank you for that. In 60 seconds, issues for Peloton and its home workout equipment again. Why the fitness company is recalling more than 2 million exercise bikes. Peloton is recalling millions of its popular exercise bikes. A defect is being blamed for more than a dozen injuries. Blaine Alexander has details.
We are betting on ourselves this year.
It's one of the country's most popular home workout brands. Now, Peloton is telling riders to pump the brakes, issuing a voluntary recall of its original bike, sold in the U.S. between January 2018 and May 2023. The issue? The seat post, which the company says can break unexpectedly during use. Of the more than 2.1 million bikes sold during that 5-year span, Peloton says it's received 35 reports of the posts breaking, with 13 reports of injuries, including a wrist fracture, lacerations, and bruises.
The way that I hit the ground kind of landed on my wrist and pushed into my shoulder.
Daniel Rush says he was doing a cool-down ride when the seat suddenly gave way.
There was no sign on the bike that something was wrong. It was just 1 minute you're sitting on the bike, next minute you're sitting on the floor.
If people have one of these bikes, what should they do?
Stop using it right away. You don't want this to happen to you.
If you have a recalled bike like this one, Peloton says it's an easy fix. They'll mail you another part free of charge, and you can replace it yourself. It's just the latest uphill climb for the already embattled brand. Peloton stock dropped nearly 9% Thursday with news of the recall, its fourth in 3 years. In 2021, the company recalled its popular tread machine after a 6-year-old child was pulled underneath and died. Last year, the company said it was slowing production due to reduced demand.
Well, there are 2.2 million of these that are being recalled. It's a very popular exercise bicycle. Pay attention to this recall.
Blaine Alexander, NBC News.
Ahead for us, how AI is revolutionizing recycling with robots. As we've been reporting, artificial intelligence is changing the world top to bottom. And at the very bottom is garbage. Tonight, Jake Ward shows us how AI is becoming a major part of the recycling industry.
At this recycling center in Boulder, Colorado, a blur of hands separates plastic, glass, and paper into over a dozen categories.
It is hard, grueling, tedious work to sort out all those materials.
And that, along with the cost of recycling, not to mention our consumption and carelessness, means only 69 million of the 292 million tons of waste we throw away each year is recycled, sold, and reused. And Suzanne Jones, whose nonprofit runs this place, says staffing it is hard.
These aren't jobs that people are clamoring for.
Now, automation and artificial intelligence are part of the process.
A good human sorter is still better than a robot.
Pretty tried and true.
However, robots don't need lunch breaks, they don't call in sick, and they don't need to go on vacation. And they can work a double shift.
This one, made by Colorado-based AMP Robotics, uses machine vision and a vacuum grabber to pick out what it can. And according to CEO Matanya Horowitz, the lease costs roughly the same as 1 or 2 workers' annual salary.
We identify hundreds of different, sort of specific types of things, but we're always teaching it new things.
And as the AI learns at this company lab how to tell pieces of plastic from sheets of paper, it also learns how to grab them.
In the future, it'll go for the flat spots and get better and better over time.
Would it be the case that if you smash this thing up a million different ways, it will eventually learn all million possibilities?
Well, even better, it learns to generalize. In addition to the million, it'll learn the 1,000,001 that it's never seen.
And the AI can learn the exact chemical composition of each item, allowing it to not only fingerprint which company it came from, but also sort the stuff so exactly recyclers can guarantee customers a purer form of recycled plastic or paper, not one that's mixed up with materials humans might miss.
When you total up the value of all the stuff that we put up in the garbage, you end up with these colossal figures, hundreds of billions of dollars of commodities that right now the world doesn't have access to because the sorting problem is too hard.
This is the river of refuse that flows from us each day. But if AI makes it possible to see its contents more clearly, it could become a pool of materials we never throw away. Jake Ward, NBC News, Boulder, Colorado.
That's Nightly News for this Thursday. Thank you for watching. I'm Lester Holt. Please take care of yourself and each other. Good night, everyone. Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.